All right, board members, we have a few missing. We are going to, just for your awareness as well, we are going to excuse Member Cole. He had some prior obligations he had to take care of. And Member Booth will be joining us in a little bit. He had to go do a rehearsal for the thing tonight. The conference that's happening tonight. So he'll be back in a little bit. We have board members still trickling in, but we want to circle back. We want to circle back to Board Policy 2001, Board Compensation. And as a reminder, this was tabled on December 5th. And there was a motion to amend, was made by Member Earl and seconded by Member Bogus. Can we pull up, we need staff here as well, but we need to pull up draft 2, that's where we're working from. So we'll give a second to that, for that to get pulled up, because the motion that was left before the body was that the board strike lines 30 to 36, amend line 42, and add to line 46. So when we get that ready, we'll cover that, and then we'll jump back in and pick this up. Okay, here we are. So, Member Earl, if it's okay with you, because we left a month ago on your
Do you want me to just
motion.
kind of refresh kind of where we were?
That's what I'm wondering, if you want to just pick up where we left off.
Yeah,
we can
so
do that.
let's hope I can do this adequately. Can someone make that a little larger? What's like to be what, board member? Oh yeah, good point. I know, I have little smoke signals that I've setting up so I can send smoke signals across the room. So it would be striking 30 through 36, and what it really does is it means that it's moving the legislative general session or interim meetings line, so that would be under the provisions on line, so if you look at draft 2, under 42 through 46, it just adds there that a legislative general session or interim meeting could be included. It kind of leaves that a little bit broad, but it's indicating that those would be included as part of those. I have 4 meeting days per month was the suggestion of increasing, but I think in looking at Board Member Bogus's documents, it may be a good idea just to set a yearly amount, that this is how many you could get per year. I think there's some wisdom in that. We talked to staff on, what's today? Tuesday, and asked, and there was the possibility of budgeting up to a certain amount, which fell around 90, 93 or something is what, as far as availability of funds. If we're looking at maybe 80 to 85, I don't know, that could be a possibility there. So I'm just kind of throwing some information out, and it would be striking lines 30 through 35, mainly so that it's not 2 of these, 2 of that. It was 2 of these annually, 5 of those annually, but it would just be a set of, you can get up to this many in a year, and so you would have to just provide an affidavit for those. I was going to add one more item. It was from that meeting the other day.
Well, are we?
Okay, so an average.
Let me ask this.
Yeah.
Because the motion to amend was on here. Are you seeking to amend the amendment when you say add one more thing?
Yeah, I guess I would need to do that if I were going to. So I think I would make an amendment. Let's see. Let me look at line 42. Yeah, a board member may receive compensation for up to, I guess it would be 80 meeting days per year. Would it be sitting right there? I don't know if it would sit there on 42. I don't know if it would have to be a separate line. Maybe someone's going to need to help me with that. But I would make it up to 80 days in the year, and I'm not sure where that needs to go. So maybe that's something the body can look at.
Well, we're kind of short on staff, and I don't know
I know
if
the
we can
board
get,
designates the following.
if we can get,
Okay, I think it actually would go on 24. So the board designates the following as other, maybe not. Where's the general meetings, eligible meetings? Let's see.
As other authorized meetings, so it's above that.
Yeah.
You've got them all right above that.
So maybe it actually needs to, maybe it just needs to be a general statement that's above all of the meetings. So like on line 14 or something,
That's what I would.
for attendance at meetings of, or other authorized meeting by the
Yeah.
board,
So I
not to
have-
exceed 80,
This is
reimbursement for 80 days during the year, something like that.
2 and this is 3. So,
So on line number 14, I believe something like at the end of that line, adding not to exceed 80 for the year.
Christina? Yeah, that's, you like that? Of here.
I'm sorry, member Lear,
Oh,
let's
so
get a
you're
microphone. I
So,
know,
Board
I
Member
wanna
Lear,
kinda
maybe you're
get back on
suggesting
track here.
a C that just indicates, because that would keep it broader. Is that what I'm saying? So maybe a C that says the same things, a board member may be reimbursed up to 80 meetings per year. So it would be a C instead of, we've got A, B, and then this, a C that would sit underneath there, right? Because it would incorporate. Okay.
Both, I think that's what you intended.
Yeah, I believe that would be it.
Clarification, are you saying a C, a big C under little a?
No, a C, a little c, so you have, A would be the salary of, under
Uh-huh.
eligible meetings, and then you have little b, which is the board member may receive compensation
Uh-huh.
for these items, and then a C that says compensation may not
Okay.
exceed 80 days per year,
Okay. And would that,
80 meetings.
and so that would be taking line 59 out of Bogus's draft 3,
I'm looking at draft 2.
right, and putting
Oh.
it into draft 2.
Oh, maybe it would be.
It would be her line 59
Okay, let me,
and inserting it into
yeah.
as a C.
Except for it wouldn't
on
say
line
auxiliary meetings, it would just
Say
be
meetings.
Meetings, because it
On-
would incorporate.
And it would go after line 46 on draft 2.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what just happened there.
Well, it's
Do
done.
we, are we amending the amendment? Do we have something?
It would
Director
be, so it'd be
Rasmussen, are you? Yeah,
striking
he
number
might be
2.
Catching
Okay.
that.
And then it would be adding a C that is resembles, so it would say up to 80 meetings per year, so. Board member compensation, may receive compensation, yep. Yep,
Let's make sure we get that amendment to the amendment where you want it to be.
yes. Get my glasses. Board member may receive compensation for no more. Yeah, I think that looks accurate.
Okay. So this is the motion before the board then. And this is an amendment to the amendment that we left on December 5th. So the motion before the board is strike line 42. And we're, again, as a reminder, we're working off of draft 2. And before I read that, remember, Earl, you have another comment?
Yeah, just a quick clarification. Can someone, maybe staff or something, look at this and just make sure I'm not saying, I want to make sure it's 80 incorporating all of them, not 80. And then also all of our committee meetings and, right? I don't know, let me just make sure we're, total of 80, but I don't know if it outlines it somewhere else, so.
While you look at that,
Okay.
let's get a comment
Yep.
from Member
Go
Brinton.
ahead.
I just wondered,
Oh,
in your first draft, wasn't it a total of 117 days, so you're taking that and capping it at 80? Wasn't it? Well, was-
17, I'm not aware of 117 anywhere.
Oh, that's draft 3. Okay.
Okay, so that's That's in a different draft. Do you want to comment on that?
It actually is in this draft. So without that language, this draft would total 117 days. With that language, it would cap it at 80.
Okay, so I think we're paused on the, no, it's, are we paused on the amendment for a second? Member Earl? Okay, let's just make sure we get it right. Member Lear, do you have a question?
And there aren't necessarily amendments, but if there's a meeting of the minds among all of us, I don't want to overcomplicate this. When you're ready.
Well, where we are now is we're waiting for Member Earl to get her motion where she wants it. So if you want to wait for that for comment, or if you have
I
something
can
else,
start, and maybe this is something Jenny wants to.
it just depends on if you want her mind involved, because it's obviously
Well, I
encumbered
don't,
with.
I already mentioned it to her.
Okay.
I think the definition of meeting is, there's no definition of meeting. So I'm less concerned with the content of possible interactions is spelled out. But I think it leaves to the board member's own discretion if a meeting means a phone call that meets these objectives. Does a meeting mean a Zoom meeting? Could it mean a Zoom meeting? Is FaceTime adequate? Is only in person what we're intending? So if we're all saying no, any kind of meeting in air quotes that a board member calls a meeting, then that's good. And you still provide the reason, the people you're meeting with, and then that's good. So that was one of my concerns is, what do we mean by meeting? That's probably my biggest one. The other thing was, how broadly we want to, if we're all thinking similarly, that meetings related to the objectives of the board's strategic plan, if that's a broad expectation, that's great. But because now I'll be serving on an external committee that will have additional meetings, I would like to participate and present the board's perspective. So if that's broad enough to cover our external committee assignments, if appropriate, then that's great. If somebody thinks that we need to be more specific and articulate that, then that would be good too. So those were my two thoughts in terms of definition of meeting, not content but style, and then meeting based on an external assignment.
Yeah. Thank you. And I don't know, before Member Earl, I turn over to you. I don't, we talk about external committee assignments and standing committees. These changes to this rule, as far as I understand, will not change those. We're talking about compensation for potential additional meetings. Is that correct? I just wanted to, I think that's correct, but, and I don't know if that,
That doesn't really answer my question.
well, I don't even know, did you have a question? Or were
Yeah,
you
my
just-
question was, would this definition of related to the board's strategic plan, is that broad enough to cover external meetings that are specific to an issue in the board's strategic plan? I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I think
Right.
it's, there's some things that have to do with activities that are good for students and things like that.
I would think so, but I don't know if that's like who cares what you think, Matt? What does the board think,
No,
right?
I'm saying
So
if that's the general feeling of board members,
Yeah.
then I'm good with no further definition. If people are thinking in a narrower mindset, nope, this is legislators only, legislative meetings only, or then I think then it's better to maybe process that.
Okay. Member Earl.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure there's clarification. When we checked with Scott, and he can verify this, and asked what is the allocation? In other words, financially, what is the availability of funds that can be used? Because we don't want to go outside of what is already budgeted, because then we're starting to pull from other budgeted areas. So in talking with him and he can verify if I'm wrong, in looking at our budget that's budgeted for the board for compensation, for travel, for that kind of a thing, they can budget up to 93. If we want to change 80 to a higher number, we can. 93, but that's not 93 additional days. That's a board members during the year, right? That's it. That's the maximum during the year. That would include board meetings, study meetings, and then additional meetings. So the 80 is what I put up there, but we can adjust that however. But keep in mind that our budget, and that was the key thing for me, is what is the budget that the board has that we can use for meetings, is at the max 93. Am I articulating that right? Based on the budget we have right now. That's right, but that's why I kind of went a little lower than what we had, so there was some flexibility left within our budget. But anything I would say different than, okay.
Chair Hymas, just for the good of the group, Board Member Earl's spot on. When 93 meetings fits into your budget, so any less number of meetings that you debate here or discuss here would be sustainable and supported by the budget as well. So.
And like one other item, and I think I mentioned this earlier, that 55 is the average last year that people were compensated for. Now, of course, that means that there would be some that had more and some that had less, but that was the average. Just keep that in mind. One other item on line 42 that, like if, what did we amend here? Yeah, would not be, instead of the 4 days, that line 42 would probably read, a board member may receive compensation for additional meeting days for time worked related to, and then that listing of things there. So it wouldn't spell out a specific number. It would just say, these things you're compensated for, those are outlined above, and then any additional ones, this is what they could be. It doesn't say you can do 4, you can do 6 per year. But once you hit your 80 cap, or 90, whatever we choose, right? That's where you've capped out. So, and that would be board members to be aware of that. Because that's
Okay.
budgeted. That's what we have for money.
Thank you. One of my, and I see Member Carey here as well. One of my thoughts though is if we just put a cap and say board members can have up to X amount of meetings, we have to be careful, because what if I cover all my 90 by June and then I just take 6 months off, right? So we still have to protect specific meetings. So I'm hesitant to just say, hey, we can have up to X amount. Response there, or, okay. That's just something to throw out to the board. So let's go over to Member Carey.
Yeah, and I have a different question, so if you wanted to follow up on that, okay. So I believe we addressed this in the last meeting. I just want to make sure that my recollection is correct. On line 45, we refer to board member district meetings. And my concern last time was, like Board Member Earl, Board Member Wood, Board Member Hall, they come to Weber County, right? And we meet with our health department to talk about some of the health-related issues. That's not necessarily in their district. That's my district. So when we refer to board member district meetings, and if I could ask the maker of the motion, is there a definition that is that geographical? Like, what does that mean? Because I don't want to penalize you or anyone else when you're doing the work of the board, but not necessarily within your geographical district. Does that make sense? And that's what I'm looking for, just clarification on what does that mean when we say board member district meetings? Thank you, Chair.
I guess I was thinking, when I say district meetings, it's within my district. And so that would be, I've had reading meetings and other meetings within my voting district. So that's what that would mean. I would think that perhaps if someone wanted to get reimbursed for those meetings, it might even fall under the strategic plan because it's under safety. So, yeah.
Just so then, number 2 is a geographical designation. Is that okay? Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Member Lear?
I had a similar thought, but for a different, we just say it, not define it. It doesn't seem that there's a place or a, how would you cover like charter school consultations or meetings, or USDB similarly? Should that say district? And then charter schools sort of belong to everybody. See, charter schools, if I could, I consult a lot, often, I visit often Roots, not in my district. Sarah's gonna give me her money.
Hey, we are, so it sounds like we're having this, there's a couple things going on here. We have a motion on the board that we haven't seconded, and quite frankly, I don't even know if we're debating the motion or the overall policy. And so, in order to get, how do we get organized here? What do we want to do? Do you want to, I'm ready to put this motion before the board and at least have a discussion on this motion, or do we want to continue on with the discussion on the overall general policy here?
Put it up and let's start amending it.
Can we get moving in that direction? Does that work? And remember, Earl, I'm going to check just one more time that this is your motion here.
It would be striking, oh, no, it's there. Yep, that's right. Yep.
So this is an amendment to an amendment here, and the amendment reads that we're going to amend draft 2. We're going to amend line 42 to 43 to read, a board member may receive compensation for additional meeting days for time worked related to, and then the second part is insert after line 46, C, a board member may receive compensation for no more than 80 meeting days per year. So let's go ahead and if there's no discussion to it, let's put it to a vote. And I don't see any lights, so let's, oh yeah, we need a second. Thank you, Member Lear. Okay, so we have a second. Let's go ahead and vote then. The highlighted portion, yes. And again, this is an amendment to an amendment, so we're going to come back to the other amendment. We need 2 more. Okay, that motion fails. We have 6 for, 6 abstentions, and 1 no. The abstentions being Member Bollinger, Member Reel, Member Hall, Member Green, Member Bogus, Member Brenton, with 1 no vote of Member Wood, Vice Chair Wood. So this brings us to our underlying motion that the board strike lines 30 through 36, amend line 42 to 4 meetings per month, add to line 46 a legislative general session or interim meeting. Discussion to this motion? I don't see any. Let's go ahead and cue it up. You want to process it? Member Earl?
need to point out that the way this language is currently written would be 60 additional days. So as long as people are only doing 20 or 33, I'm just saying there is a point where the budget kicks it, right? That you can't, there still is a cutoff point. So 33 mandatory, and then you can't go more than the, so I'm just letting people know, so.
Thank you.
Chair, can I
Yeah.
ask the maker of a motion a question?
Please.
And I am not trying to, you don't have to answer, obviously, as you know. And I'm not trying to be self-serving in any way, shape, or form, but did you calculate up the meetings that leadership did? And are there any provisions here for leadership, or like, are they the same requirements? Did you average those? I mean, it is significant.
I just added in the legislative component, which would be for any board members. So it would still have the same requirements for leadership, which would be the possibility of 2 times a month. But then it would add in the the legislative component. So I times 15 times 4, it should be 12 times 4. So that would be 48 additional meetings. And maybe 48 would work. We just can't exceed, we're going to have a cap still somewhere. So, but then I don't know what that puts your other meetings at. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, y'all can't help you. I'm on a meeting.
Well, that would be, even if, that would only, then the mandatory meetings would have to stay below, they could only be 2 or 3 per month, right? Because you got to stay below the 93, so.
Member Lear?
Suggestion, and let me see if there's any interest in this. There apparently have been a group of people who have been meeting about this. Is that right, Jenny? You don't know. But we're not going to iron out anything given that vote we just saw today. Could we get because I once, in a land far away, a couple of terms ago, had a idea that there should just be a stipend for board leaders, the board leadership. An extra stipend. I think that's what the legislature does. Not that that's necessarily the perfect model, but it is an example. So I'm wondering if we can go back to the drawing board and stop fussing about days and maybe come up with a plan like that, and that maybe includes some extra days, and then bring something a little more, a little better prepared to the board.
And I see you.
Anyway, I just have that thought. Is there any consensus about that? Or, because it sounds like some people are just basically opposed to this conversation and or any changes at all, which still you can vote no. But it sounds like I've always thought and increasingly over the 8 years I've been here, there's a lot expected of board leadership. And I think that there's some increased compensation would be appropriate. But I'd rather do it by stipend rather than an incentive to just be bustling up to the hill and sometimes working at cross purposes with staff. So that's just my opinion about encouraging and providing an incentive for being at the legislative working level all the time. So I
Okay.
just wondered if there's any desire, and I'm happy to, because I'm in the middle about this. I just think that it is true that leadership deserves some additional compensation. But it sounds like, so interest in that?
Well, I understand that I'm leadership, so I hate to
No,
comment.
stop,
but
everybody's got to stop being
I know,
so.
but I would support tabling this and getting it. I think picking it up halfway through right now has been confusing for a lot of people, especially since not a majority, but 4 of us are brand new to this. So if you were to take your opinion and mold that into some sort of motion, that would be.
I move that we postpone this discussion until the January or the February or March board meeting. Probably February, because I think everybody wants something in place.
Can I, well, is there a second to that? I'll second it. Okay. And then, do you want to speak to it additionally?
I pretty much did. I just think this is a fool's errand today to try to come up with consensus. We saw that 6 people are abstaining or
Right.
because they either don't have an opinion or feel uncomfortable. So
Right.
let's bring something that's more substantive that maybe others can add to.
And I see we have lights, but let me just ask, so that we don't repeat this same thing. I would be in favor, and I don't know how this motion would go if it'd be an amendment, but I'd be in favor to starting like on a draft 2 as is, right? Or something, some sort of just base that we can start from rather than coming in the middle of an amended motion. Okay. So will you work with staff, make sure it's clear up here on the board, your substitute motion, and then we'll go through these lights and make sure that we're getting everybody heard. So we have Member Bogus and then Member Davis.
Sorry, yes, sir. So for clarity, in response to Member Lear's thing, in order to do a stipend, we have to have a legislative code change. So the way that it is being brought forth right now, we can take care of our business at the board level. In order to do what she's asking, we have to seek a policy request and legislative funding change through the legislature. Because how we are paid is driven by code, which is why the meeting language is in there, and we can't be paid for more than 1 meeting per day. That stems from those code lines, and so it would precipitate a funding request or a policy request through the legislature.
And I think that could come out
And-
as this, you know, if we're looking at the motion as is to ultimately postpone and try to get our things together, I think this would come out, Member Bogus, to your point, during that off time, whereas there's no way we're going to get that done today.
Can I just respond to that in 30 seconds? And that is, I think that discussion would involve looking at the code, looking if compensation could be articulated in a way that was consistent with code. If we didn't use the word stipend, if we paid leadership for 10 extra days, there are many ways that language could possibly come to be consistent with code. So I just want to look at it with more greater legal minds than we
Thank you.
have today.
Thank you. Member Davis.
To all of you that aren't legal minds, Joe and Carol are exempt. This is probably uncharacteristic for what we do on a board chair, but can we just find out why all the abstentions and no's? Because I'll be honest, if people are just like, look, we're not interested in any raises for the board, I don't want to put a committee through the pain of all this and put our board through the pain of this again if we're going nowhere. And I'm fine with it. I didn't suggest it in the first place. I never really care. I didn't care, but I was willing to be supportive if people felt like they needed that or it was cost prohibitive to serve or what have you. So I was trying to stay open-minded, but now there's all these abstentions and no's. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't be, so.
I'm hesitant to call people out for their votes.
Can I finish one more thing too? And also the reason why I did vote for it was because I had no idea until yesterday or a couple days ago that we averaged 55 meetings a year. So moving to 80 would only be 2 extra meetings a month. I felt like that was pretty reasonable. I don't want long, convoluted thing. I mean, if it's like 2 extra meetings a month at your discretion, work toward the goals of the board, fine. Everything else is already pretty much laid out.
I appreciate that. So let me just restate the motion here and make sure that we are having debate on the proper motion here. The motion before the board is that the board postpone item 6.2 and begin discussion on draft 2 with no amendments to draft 2. Member Lear.
I did have an end date in there proposed because I don't think it should languish. If we believe in this, we should do it soon. If we don't believe in it, then I'm with you. I'd like to know why that people are just not interested.
Yeah, what is the date that you would?
That's why I said February or March board meeting, but March. I mean, February could end it if we did. Whoever is in charge did some information gathering and find out how many people are interested in even discussing this or voting on something like this. So yes, I think I would rather have an end time in there so it doesn't just languish. So yes, I would say to March board meeting.
Okay, and I was the second, and I'll second that as well.
And if it comes sooner, great.
So, yeah, Member Carey.
Would Board Member Lear consider a friendly amendment that no later than the March board meeting? Thank you.
And is it the, I know there was some, not joking, but discussion with jovialness of going back to a committee, but are we wanting to bring it back to the full board? Is that the intent of the maker of the motion?
I think I would I think we could come up with something and let leadership decide where it would be best discussed.
Leadership just asked. Okay. All right, we'll figure something out. But to Member Davis's point, yeah, we would like to know. We don't want to spend 2 months. This is going to be a busy 2 months anyway. And if there is no appetite for this, then let's get it out. We're going to move on with this vote here, but if there's not, then let's communicate and say, hey, we're not interested in this. I voted abstention. I know what's going on. I don't want to have anything to do with it, right? I'm just removing. So the motion before the board then is that the board postpone item 6.2 to no later than the March board meeting and begin discussion on draft 2, no amendments. Member Boggess.
I would move to amend it to begin the discussion on draft 3.
Is there a second? Okay, so the amendment is to begin the discussion on draft 3. Yes, a second by Member Green. Yes. So she does have a soft voice. That's true. Let's go ahead, and I don't see any discussion on that. Do you want to speak to that motion, Member Boggess?
Well, I would just offer that draft 2 in its current form it's incongruent. It doesn't have clarity. There's a lot of misunderstanding. I mean, I could go through, and we spend a lot of time with staff. We spend a lot of time with the writers. Draft 3 is clear. It has guardrails. It has all the questions that Carol has. I believe it answers the vast majority of them with the guardrails under prohibitions. It outlines and defines what a meeting is. It goes through all of those things, and with one simple number change, it becomes the baseline of this conversation today, and it's just so much more clear and has all the things that everybody in the room has been asking for.
Thank you, Member Bogus. So the amendment before the board then is to replace the draft 2 with draft 3 so that the board discussion begin on draft 3. Let's go ahead and cue that up for a vote. That should be, is that all of us? That's, oh, welcome back, Member Booth. That passes. 9 in favor, 1 abstention by Member Davis, 4 in opposition, Member Hart, Member Reel, Member Lear, Member Earl. Okay, so the underlying motion then is that the board postpone item 6.2 to no later than the March board meeting and begin discussion on draft 3, no amendments. Member Bogus. Member Bogus.
Say to bring it back in February.
We voted to replace draft 3 with draft 2 on the beginning of our next discussion. Now there's an amendment to move it to February instead of March.
And with a
Second.
second, I would speak to that.
Is there a second on that? Okay, Member Green, go ahead, Member
So,
Bogus.
we have lots of meetings and time to get together where we're all going to be in the same place between now and February. And I would just say no later than February. If we did the work, we could take care of this in one of our legislative meetings in a single vote. So not that we should be debating it there, but if the work is done, we could take care of our business. So I think no later than February is not only appropriate, it's just the better choice.
Thank you. So the motion before the board then is that the board, or that we change March to February. Let's go ahead and vote. Okay, that motion passes, that amendment passes 11-3 with the no votes being Member Hart, Member Lear, and Member Hymas. Let's go back to our underlying motion then, and that is that the board postpone item 6.2 to no later than the February board meeting and begin discussion on draft 3, no amendments. Let's go ahead and vote. Okay, that motion fails. The 5 in favor are Member Bollinger, Member Brinton, Vice Chair Wood, Member Booth, and Member Hymas. So that brings us back to, you can make me dig. Okay. That brings us back to Member Earl's motion, which is that the board strike lines 32 through 36, amend line 42 to 4 meeting days per month, add to line 46, a legislative general session or interim meeting. Member Earl.
I'd like to make an amendment to the amendment, and I would strike from 4 meeting days to month to 3, which puts us to 36, which, based on the other items, I still think we have to, there still is a cap regardless, so I'm not sure where that cap falls. But since people didn't, I don't know whether I do a new cap. Is that what I do? I'm not sure. Three meeting days per month.
So there's a motion then to amend the amendment to now read 3 meeting days per month. Is there a second to that? We're going to replace 4 meeting days, and yeah, that's additional. Yeah. So again, the motion to amend the amendment is to replace change 4 meeting days per month to 3 meeting days per month. Again, seeking a second. Okay, Member Davis seconds. It looks like we have Member Earl, do you want to speak to that motion?
Yeah, I guess if we don't want to go through it for a set amount of days, and that was kind of the idea, it left it broader. You might have more during legislative session, less during right? Then I'm looking for 3, keeps us within probably that budget that we have. So, which would be about 36 additional days per year. So that's my thoughts.
Okay, then we have Member Davis and then Member Carey.
I mean, it's simple. I think we already do all of our meetings as assigned by the chair. That's simple. You know, nobody has to keep track of lots of different things. You know, I think the 80 is probably easier because you might have a bunch during legislative session and hardly any in summer, and it kind of all comes out in the wash. However, that didn't pass. So, you know, if this is amenable to people, I'm looking for something that's relatively simple, like we currently have.
Thank you. Member Carey?
I'm just in line. I have a motion that I would want to make, so.
Okay, so the motion before the board then is to change 4 meeting days per month to 3 meeting days per month. Let's go ahead and vote. This vote fails with 7 against, 6 for, and 1 abstention. The abstention being Member Reel. The votes for Member Booth, Member Lear, Member Wood, or Vice Chair Wood, Member Earl, Member Davis, and Member Hymas. Member Carey.
Chair, I'd like to make with music no less. This is dramatic. Okay. Now, Chair, if I may, I'd like to make a motion to divide. And I'd like to divide each item 1 through 3 just into separate motions, just for primarily purposes of clarity. And then I have a follow-up motion following the motion to divide.
Perfect. There's a motion to divide. Do we have a second? Second. Seconded by Member Booth. Is there any objection to that motion to divide? No objection. We're all in favor. Let's go ahead. Back to you, Member Carey.
Thank you, Chair. And then with the motion to divide, I'd like to take the second item and make my amendment there. And the second item would be to have line, was it 42? Where's,
Yeah, 42. 42, it is 42 right here.
oh, okay, yeah. Oh, wait. So my motion in regards to item number 2, so motion number 2 would be that line 42 be amended to read, a board member may receive compensation for up to a total of 80 meetings per year. Then I'll make it 79. Or 81. It's like we're playing roulette. It's just okay. Yeah. So we'll make it to 79. And yeah. Oh, okay. Based on the wisdom of the board, we'll make it to 84.
So the motion then is that a motion to amend line 42 to read, a board member may receive compensation for up to a total of 84 meetings per year. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
A second by Member Bollinger. Member Carey, would you like to speak to this?
This goes to what Board Member Davis and I think a lot of members around the table are thinking, which is the appeal to me is the simplicity of the approach, which is instead of a division of sanctioned meetings, non-sanctioned meetings, this qualifies, this doesn't qualify. I've always believed that at the end of the day, the voter will have the ultimate say on whether or not we made the right decision. And instead of putting a lot of caveats and restrictions on particular meetings or activities that may be sanctioned or unsanctioned, this puts that in the hand of the voter. And so I think by saying a total of 84 meetings per year, every board member has their discretion as to what they're going to do with that time. So that's why I'm making the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and cue that up for a vote then. You ready?
Meetings as assigned by chair, plus whatever additional, up to 80. Go. Oh, 84.
84.
I was going through the math, like, how am I gonna keep track of 80? I'm like, I could do, so, per month.
Okay, that passes with 11 in favor, 2 abstentions being from Member Reel and Member Lear, and 1 no vote from Vice Chair Wood. Okay? We still have 2 amendments on the floor then, or on the table. Yeah, we'll have 3 total. Or do we want to address these other 2? One is strike lines 30 through 36, and there's another one that's still out there. Add to line 46, a legislative general session or interim meeting. Member Davis, your light is on, but I'm not sure if it was okay. It's not. Member Carey?
So Chair, I believe it's in order for me now to address motion number 1. And based on the results of the motion number 2, I would just leave that language as it is because I believe that now would conform the proposed policy appropriately. So my motion would be that the board strike lines 30 to 36.
Okay, the motion before the board is that the board strike lines 30 through 36. Is there do we need a second? That's what's on the, so we're just going to re-bring this back up and put it to a vote, if that's okay. Let's do that then. Let's put that to a vote. Member Lear?
Sorry if I'm being dense, but if we strike 30 through 36, the only meetings other than the regularly scheduled meetings would be those meetings allowed under line 42 down to 46. Is that right? Is that accurate?
From what I understand, yes.
So board agenda, up to 6 additional meeting days for time worked related to board agenda items, board district meetings. We still haven't solved the issue of charter schools or USDP. And meetings related to the objectives of the board's strategic plan. Those are the kinds of extra meetings we can attend and be compensated for.
I recognize that we're in the middle of voting, and I'll ask, once we finish this vote, I'll ask the board some additional questions on how they would like me to proceed with my thing. But I will say that board member district meetings, I thought we had determined last month that meant anything within your district responsibilities, not necessarily an LEA district. So when you say excluding charter,
But so I couldn't go to a meeting, even though charters are completely open enrollment, I can't attend a meeting of a charter school for compensation outside of my own district.
from what I understand, yes, that would be accurate, outside of your boundaries.
Salt Lake City boundaries.
That's how I'm reading this. Now, whether that's the intent, I don't know.
And I think that is,
Carol can't come to my
I guess it could fall into the strategic
Right.
plan. How can I have my golden child?
Yeah, it would fall under strategic plan, so it is covered in other areas.
All right, we'll make that.
Let me ask
Aye.
the board, do we want to pause voting, or do we want to vote this, and then ask, recircle with questions? What do we want to do here? Keep voting? Okay.
I didn't realize I was into the vote. I'm sorry. That's okay. I made a mistake once. That's not. Yeah. Good thoughts.
So did Molly.
Oh, but she did too. Oh, we have to vote. Oh, man.
Okay, that passes with 13 yeses, 1 abstention, being from member Reel. And so we still have one more motion on the floor, and that is add to line 46, a legislative general session or interim meeting. And I'm going to interrupt real quick, just I'm trying to manage this role as chair. If I'm moving too quickly, then you've got to say, Matt, give me a second, okay? Because I'm trying to pull up votes, assuming that we're ready. But if we have questions and you need to let things process, I'm fine giving some time, but, yeah, thank you. Anyway, so the motion, again, the motion before the board is to add to line 46, a legislative general session or interim meeting.
So how would it read, please? Can I?
Can we get that, can we get that, staff, how that would read?
Oh, there it is.
I think it would be a number 4. It would be an added,
General session or
line.
Interim meeting, comma?
No, it's the completion, so it's that list, 1, 2, 3, that's a fourth one to be added.
Oh, a fourth.
After line 46.
Ah,
Include
gotcha.
there instead of up above.
Afterline, a legislative general session or interim meeting.
We don't, since it's a total of 80 days.
So then, it would be,
a motion to strike it.
okay.
member, it looks like member Earl has a light on.
You're so smart.
Oh, and I don't.
It was moving the legislative piece from there down further, but, and it's just that, it would be saying these meetings would count. You're right, you might not need those, but it articulates that it would fall under that category. You could say it was part of the strategic plan or whatever, but it just, clarity.
Thank you, member Earl. Member Carey?
Yeah. No, I'm ready to make the motion if the discussion is over, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion that is here before us is to add to line 46 a legislative general session or interim meeting. If there's any amendments to this, then let's do it. If not, if we're ready to vote, let's vote. I am cognizant of the fact that the last 2 times we've done this, in the middle of voting, we've had questions. So if we're ready, let's do it. If not, then no, there are 2 different board members and myself included 3. So let's go ahead and vote then. Looks like that passes unanimously with member Kelly being absent. Okay, we now have an underlying motion that I'm going to need help putting up there. As you get that up, essentially it's going to be to accept Board Policy 2001 as amended. Member Bogus?
Substitute motion. I'd like to move draft 3 and have the board approve draft 3.
The
And then I have an amendment of my own.
the substitute motion is to move draft 3 forward. Do we have a second? Second, member Green. Member Bogus, would you like to speak to that?
With the
And go ahead and put an amendment
I would
as
like
well.
to-
You've got them for.
to move the amendment that on line number 59, we changed the number 80 to 50.
So a new motion, well, how do we do this? Because we have to first agree to work from draft 3. Is that correct? So I don't know, as I'm thinking about this process, I don't know if we can,
So then it would
Move
be
to-
a main motion, and then it was seconded, and then I moved to amend the motion.
I'm sorry, admittedly, I got split.
Okay, so the motion was made, it was seconded, and then I moved to amend my own motion.
Okay,
So now we're in the framework of an amendment.
you're in the framework of an amendment of a draft that the body has not accepted yet. Am I hearing that correctly?
So the body doesn't have to accept it. Once it's moved as a substitute motion, it's on the table.
Sure. Okay. So what I'm hearing then is that we're moving draft 3 as amended.
It has not yet been amended.
You
We
want
have
us-
to
You
approve
want us
this
to
motion.
vote to amend draft 3 and then vote to accept draft 3.
Yes.
Let's do it. Okay, line number,
In line 59, to say up to 50. Which keeps us within, oh, may I speak to that with a second?
yeah, let's make sure that the motion is correct here. Amend line 59 to replace 80 with 50, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so do we have it sounds like we have a second?
Randy
Couple of them,
seconded it.
okay, from Member Booth. Go ahead and speak to that, Member Bogus.
So with the updated information from our finance staff, this keeps us within the financial parameters that they have articulated today.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and cue that up for a vote.
Yes.
This is on the amendment. So, the amendment of draft 3. Looks like that passes with 11 in favor, 3 opposed, those 3 being Vice Chair Hart, Member Reel, Member Lear. Brings us to our underlying motion, which would be that the board approve Board Policy 2001, Draft 3 as amended.
And if possible, I would like to speak to the motion when it is an appropriate time.
Member Bogus.
So, all the questions that we've had today, this draft addresses them. It clearly defines that we can't, like as member, or as Chair Hymas said, we can't expend all of our meetings before June and then just stop showing up. It earmarks certain meetings that are not at the discretion of the members of this body. It tallies those throughout based on our statutory obligations. It puts those in line items. If you look carefully, it puts those on lines 56, 57, and 58. And then the auxiliary meetings are tagged now at 50 meetings per year. And they are clearly defined in the definition, includes the audit committee, the standing committees, the executive committee, everything, including our board retreat and meetings of the legislature where we speak, where we don't speak. It encompasses members' constituents. And then if you track all the way down to line number 93, it puts guardrails around this so that we are clearly defined that we may not bill the taxpayer and their sacred money for meetings with lobbyists, with the press, for political caucus meetings, conferences, etc., and that if we attend more than one meeting per day, we can only receive 1 day's salary for that day. There's also, at the very bottom, there's a public element that addresses Member Carey's concern, which ultimately holds us to the taxpayer, that this will become quarterly public information on the public record and then would ultimately be published in a pathway of purposeful transparency to each of our pages on the website. And there's a minor change to line what would be 115 in this current draft that streamlines the approval process and outlines that would go through the Deputy of Superintendent of Operations or his designee.
Thank you, Member Bogus. Member Lear?
I don't like this amendment, don't support it. Contrary to what was said earlier, I still have 10 amendments that I would like addressed if this, that were not answered. One of them was, of my 11 amendments. So I can't support this. Just for instance, you've left in limbo the audit committee, which is defined under an auxiliary meeting, but then there's on line 48, no mention of the audit committee. standing committee or the full board called and noticed by the board chair. So I think you have some problems with amendment with draft 3 that still are unresolved, and I think at least we've beat up draft 2 now. So I think that it's a stronger draft.
Thank you, Member Lear. Back to Member Bogus.
So it actually does address the audit committee because per our bylaws, it's not a standing committee. So under this draft, the audit committee this draft conforms to our bylaws, which means the audit committee could meet as often as it wants. It could have as many special meetings as it wants, but it has to come out of those 50 meetings that we are allotted per year. And in our bylaws, the audit committee is not listed as a standing committee.
Thank you. Member Lear? Oh, never mind. Okay. Member Carey?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and with Board Member Bogus and I, we discussed this at length, and there is much that I like here. And when I came here today, I was expecting to support this, but in light of the additional information provided by Deputy Superintendent Jones regarding the cap on meetings, I look at this now and think that we're back to that creation of the two-tier types of meetings, those that are authorized, those that are unauthorized. And again, I like the simplicity of draft 2 because it puts everything in one bucket. And now it's, if you're doing the work of the board, it doesn't matter where you're doing it per se, but the importance is that you're doing it. And I enjoy that. The other thing is that draft 2 says, here's 3 areas that if your work is related to, it's compensable. And in draft 3, it's a little bit the opposite because it says, look, you're not going to be paid if you meet with lobbyists, if you do press interviews, attend political caucus meetings, and I agree with all that. But then it says, or conferences or any other meetings not specified. And I think we fall back into that, what may work in my district and the groups and individuals that I meet in my district may not have the same relevance as any other board member in their district. But I wouldn't want one type of meeting covered and one not covered if that board member believes, look, this is in the best interest of the people of my district. The voter at the end of the day will decide if that board member made the best decision or they object to it. And so for that, I like draft 2, again, because of the simplicity. There's a lack of favoritism in the meetings that we can attend. There's no preference in terms of this is compensable, this isn't. It says if you're doing the work of the board, you can get compensated. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to reiterate the motion before we take a vote, the motion is that the board approve Board Policy 2001, Draft 3 as amended. Let's go ahead and get that ready and start voting. Oh, it's open. Okay. Could try it. It looks like that fails. A vote of 12 to 2. 12 against, 2 for. Those that are for is Member Green and Member Bogus. So the underlying motion then is to we did the three amendments. We got all those covered. And then we went to the underlying one, and then member Bogus moved. Okay, so I think we're back to the underlying motion. I'm trying to find it so I can read it, but okay, it's up on the screen. The board approves Board Policy 2001, Board Member Compensation Draft 2 is amended. Member Bogus.
I would move to amend to add a final subsection and pull lines 128 through 133 from draft 3 into draft 2.
Okay, so the motion before the board then is to pull lines 123, I'm sorry, Member Bogus, help me out here.
To pull lines 128 through 133 from draft 3
Pull lines 128 through 133 from draft 3 and insert them
and
at the
insert
end
them
of draft 2.
at the end of draft 2.
And we have a second by, who was that? Member Carey? Member Bogus, you want to speak to that?
I think we all bloviate about transparency, but there's a difference between you can grandma this and write a check for it and purposeful transparency, which means, hey, we're not afraid of giving this information to the public. And this, I think, shows in a space where we're dealing with taxpayer money and it's very personal and we all stand to gain from this. It just is an act of purposeful transparency that says we're not afraid to show you what we're doing and how we're being compensated. And I think it's a good move on behalf of the board to share that information with the public.
Thank you, Member Bogus. Vice Chair Hart?
I really value the conversation. I think it's important. I think the issue of compensation goes right along with the fact that we acknowledge that we've got more and more work than we've ever had in the past. And we deal with this as we deal with our time issues. We're now dealing with it as compensation issues. I'd like to make a motion that we postpone this item. I'm concerned that while there may be things that we can do. Oh, I'm speaking to my motion.
There's a motion to postpone. Is there any parameters on that before we seek a second?
It's a motion to postpone to next month.
A motion to postpone to next month.
Then I'll move to postpone to a future meeting.
Move to postpone to a future meeting. Do I have a second? Second,
Can
okay.
I speak to my motion?
And please speak to your motion.
Okay, I think it's an important conversation. It needs to happen. I like a lot of, this is not a judgment on anything that's been said or not said or agreed or disagreed. We simply do not have the time, nor have we had the conversations we need to have. It's one thing about what we can do. It's another thing to think about the capacity of our staff, including Sybil. It's another thing to think about what our bigger picture. Money is not endless, so it's always take away the meeting number of meetings, add to the number of meetings. It's a balancing act. It needs more conversation. I think small groups of people need to throw things out and get some perspectives out there. We just do not have the time to do this, and I don't think we're at a point where we're going to have a solution that pushes through to the win-win. So I think it's important. I'm not saying that it shouldn't happen. In fact, I think it's so important that we need to do it the right way.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hart. Vice Chair Wood?
Thank you, Vice Chair Hart. I have been the constant no on this whole thing, and it really is because of the capacity of our staff. Tracking 84 random meetings, tracking the scale, all the things. We need to know that they have the ability, the time, with all the other things that we as a board ask them to do. That is when Member Davis asked, why the abstains, why the no's. I'm a constant no looking at what we're asking of our staff. We continue to ask more and more. And so thank you, Vice Chair Hart.
Thank you. Member Davis.
I'm going to be a no on postponing. I just want to get this done. But but I'd rather not do any of these extra meetings or raises or anything at all than have a little thing on all of our public pictures that, this is what Member Brenton believes about education and loves and why she's serving, and this is how much money she's doing it for last month. It seems so like not a single person is here for the money, and making it like that. I can go on transparency.com right now and see what every single person makes. So I don't think there's anything not transparent about what we make, but I don't want people to feel like it's this, we do this to get money or compensation or anything like that. I'd rather just not pass any of it personally.
Thank you, Member Davis. So the motion before the board is to postpone to a future meeting. Let's go ahead and cue that up for a vote. That motion fails, 7-4 and 7 against. Those that were for it are Member Bollinger, Member Reel, Vice Chair Hart, Member Lear, Member Booth, Vice Chair Wood, and Member Hymas. So we are again to the previous motion, which is yeah, let's see. It's essentially to adopt draft 3 as amended. Draft 2. Okay, it is the highlighted one. There we go. So the motion on the table then is to add lines 128 to 133 on public information from draft 3 as at the end of draft 2. Member Lear.
The spirit of Vice Chair Hart's comments, I think the first part of those lines is acceptable and what I always wanted, something that the public could see, but that is accomplished by a public record that's distributed during the board meeting. I agree with Member Davis and Member Hart that this imposes a burden on the staff to delineate and detail. Somebody has to post that. It doesn't just miraculously appear on everybody's website. And I'm not willing for our compensation benefit to provide an extra burden to the staff. So I'm okay with the first part, but I would I just spoke to it instead of making the amendment. I would move the last part of this, I'm on the wrong.
So you're moving to strike lines 132 to 1 and 133.
Right, the B under that section. And then you change the A to nothing at all.
So the amendment to the amendment is to strike lines 132 and 133. Do we have a second?
And I see when it's up there.
There's an amendment to the amendment, and it is to remove or to strike lines 132 and 133 from draft 3, which would be moved to draft 2.
Which I think would be helpful if we could see that.
It's on the screen here. Essentially, it's to remove section B. Is that right, Member Lear?
That's right.
Okay. So if you remember, the original amendment is to put A and B into draft 2. Member Lear is amending it to only put part A into draft 2, leaving part B off. So a yes vote would be only A to draft, now I'm jumping ahead. A yes vote is to remove section B from the potential or possibility of moving that over to draft 2. from 3.
And can I just add to the comment I made before my motion?
Please, Member Lear, then we have Member Davis.
Briefly, the information would still be very readily available without a grammar request to the public. It would just not make extra work for the staff who would compile the information, bring it together, which is still some work, but it wouldn't make additional work in terms of posting and or maybe identifying certain board members on a public, on the board member websites.
Thank you, Member Lear. Member Davis?
Is there still room for an amendment to this?
This
Okay.
is the second amendment.
Okay. I mean, my original concern was not necessarily, not that I don't love our wonderful board secretary. My concern was just the appearance of putting the number all over our faces, but I think I'd like to amend this just to say that this just become a monthly line item on the budget report, that our secretary doesn't have to do one darn thing about it. Anybody can hear it said every month what we're spending on board member compensation. I'm looking at these folks back here. I mean, are we already tracking that anyway? Would that be difficult to add a line item on the budget report so we know, and then we can dive into that in our public meetings too if we need more specific, or maybe it's interactive when we click on it. I don't know.
Deputy Superintendent Jones?
So the answer is yes. We already have it. We already have that capability. I introduced the new format, where you can click and dive down into the
And the public
so-
can do that too, right?
Yes, right? Yeah.
That's public
Yeah.
facing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to move
public-facing.
that we do that. I think it's where the work already is done. It won't be, double work on the parts of the secretaries, and that's where people are going to go also to see what the board's spending. Sorry, I'll stop talking.
Well, why don't you? That's what I thought. Yet here we are. What is on the floor? I don't even know.
I'm asking if what I just said is friendly to hers. She'll do hers instead.
So,
Member Lear?
is when you say it would be on the board report, does that mean that it'd be individualized by board members, or would it just be the total amount is the total amount? And there's not a click down that says, I can see how many meetings Cindy attended, or how many.
I understood there would be a drill down.
Oh, and I want to know as a board member.
Deputy Superintendent Jones?
And I'm with you, Carol. What if we just said, sorry, may I?
Well, Deputy Superintendent Jones, why don't you respond to that, and then we'll get
Yeah.
other board members.
So just to clarify, the report, both yourselves and the public can drill down, but only drill down to the aggregate level of the expenditures towards your meetings and towards your travel and towards all of the budget components, right? Our report doesn't go name by name or board member by board member. So you would be able to have access to that, or the public would, to what was earlier said with the public transparency website. But there's a lag even with that, right? It takes a year or two to update that with salary data from 1 or 2 years ago. So no one that I know of, no agency goes to that level of detail on how much each one. Now, but I will say that information is grammable. If somebody were to want to know how much does each individual board member make, we would have to provide that. So, because that's public dollars, public information. Does that help clarify and answer questions from both Board Member Davis and Board Member Lear, sir?
I believe it does. Member Bogus, you're up next.
So, through the chair, I would just ask if the body would be amenable to a motion to just add, like for example, we're on Member Lear's motion. Member Lear, would you be amenable to adding language that says, should a grandma request be filed, it will be offered free of charge?
No. I think the grandma officer is also overwhelmed right now, and I don't want to invite more grandma requests. I think they're great, but I think it's a public document that could be.
But it's not a disaggregated document.
It would be the way that I'm proposing it, just not, it wouldn't be disaggregated on everyone's website. It would be a spreadsheet, or I don't even know what you'd call it, but it could be an information item to board members in the discussion during the board meeting.
So we have,
Removing disaggregation from the public record.
so we have on
Because
the,
that's not what I understand her amendment to say.
we have before us then an amendment to amend. And it's only lines 128 through 130 from draft 3 at the end of, to add that to the end of draft 2. Remember, Lear, your light is on?
not
or-
meant to be.
Okay. Let's go ahead and, because we've talked about some additional motions. We're already amending an amendment, so let's go ahead and vote on that before we put some other things on there. So if we can get that queued up for voting. So that passes, 12 in favor, 2 opposed, those in opposition, Member Carey and Member Green. That brings us to the amendment that says that we will, the motion is for the board to move lines 128 through 131 from draft 3 to the end of draft 2. Is that accurate? Member Bogus.
Move to amend to add the word individual before the word board at the end of that statement. So it would actually read, the board secretary shall include an information item on the board agenda quarterly detailing salary and reimbursement payments made to individual board members.
Is there a second to that? Second by Member Green. You want to speak to that? Well, one said it on the mic, one said it first. Yeah, I know that Randy's not Member Green. Member Bogus, do you want to speak to that? And then we're going to go to Member Lear.
I just don't believe, we talk about accountability, we talk about voter accountability, we speak about all these things, but it's really disingenuous to pontificate about these things if we're not taking action steps to achieve them. And if we're requiring our taxpayers to pay for information that we say we want them to have, again, it's disingenuous. We're just bloviating and then cutting and clipping it and putting it on the internet. There's a difference between transparency and purposeful transparency. And this would produce the things that we are all articulating that we want. And so this would make everything transparent. It would make it transparent among the board members themselves, and then it would be transparent toward the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Lear?
Minor change that might be friendly. Instead of saying the board secretary, we could say board staff.
That's fine.
Without objection, board staff rather than board secretary. Any objection to that? Okay. So the motion then is that on line 130 of draft 3, that the word individual is included before board. Is that right? Before board members, and change board secretary to board staff, which was done without objection. Okay. Member Davis.
I just want to note, some people have said why they voted no certain times or time and again, but it doesn't have anything to not wanting to be transparent or bloviating, to use that word. Some may want that, but some people have really stated they're no every single time for certain reasons. And I think it's fair to note that people aren't being, trying to be ill will or something if they don't, if they vote no.
Thank you. So the motion before the board then is that the board add individual before board members and change board secretary to board staff. Let's go ahead and vote. That passes with 13 in favor, 1 no vote being member Reel. This takes us back to something. I know. So the motion before the board is that the board add lines 128 through 131 as amended on public information from draft 3 at the end, from draft 3 and add at the end of draft 2. Let's go ahead and vote. Okay, so that passes with a vote of 12 to 2, the no votes being member Reel and member Hymas. Okay, so we are back to the motion that says that the board approves board policy 2001, board member compensation draft 2 as amended. Member Davis.
Call the question, please.
Non-debatable. So let's cue it up for a vote. And I will remind the board, although there is only 14 of us, there needs to be 10 in order to have the question called. Member Davis? And remember, we're not debating this.
I just have a question of why you would have a call the question, I guess. And because, one, you can't assume somebody's intent, but 2, why would you need to call the question if the debate could possibly not go on for another 2 hours? Why would you even need the motion at all? I'm just asking a question. I can withdraw the call the question, but why have it if?
The call the questions here. We're going to, we're ready to vote. So let's go ahead and
Some
vote.
expert can tell me.
So that passes with 11-4 and 3 against. Those against are Member Bogus, Member Green, and Member Hymas, which brings us to our final vote on this, or back to this vote without debate or discussion. We're just ready to vote, and that is that the board approves Board Policy 2001, Board Member Compensation Draft 2 as amended. We voted to call the question. Now we are on the vote of a draft 2, accepting draft 2 as amended. We need that passes, the vote of 8-6. Those against, Member Bogus, Member Lear, Member Reel, Member Green, Member Hart, and Member Wood. Where am I at here? Well, are we done with this agenda item? I just want to make sure that we're done with this agenda item. Okay. Let's take a few minutes. 5 minutes. We'll see you in 10.